I was about to board a plane to Paris when I realized I had left my passport on the kitchen counter. My stomach dropped. This trip, everything had to go perfectly, and now I couldn't leave. I rushed back into the house, panicking. I checked every drawer, every counter, and my suitcase for the passport, but it was nowhere to be found. In the middle of my frantic search, I heard something upstairs. It was a sound I hadn't expected. My husband's voice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. The flight was booked. The outfits packed. Paris had been a dream of mine for years, and now it was finally happening. Well, almost. Mike, my husband, had been supportive, though he'd grumbled a little. He hated flying, but he also knew how much this trip meant to me. He was supposed to stay home this time, taking care of business while I lived out my Parisian fantasy for a week. I had double-checked everything. My carry-on, my phone, my laptop charger. But I hadn't even thought about the one thing that could ruin it all. My passport. As I stood in the foyer, phone clutched in my hand, my mind raced. I couldn't believe I'd done this. How could I forget something so important? I needed to get it now, before my taxi arrived. I rushed upstairs, feeling the weight of every moment ticking away. I walked into the bedroom first, hoping to catch a glimpse of the passport on Mike's nightstand. Or perhaps he had placed it in the drawer where we kept our travel documents. Nothing. I turned to go to the kitchen when I heard it. A voice. It was muffled at first, but then I realized it was coming from upstairs. My stomach clenched in confusion, and my thoughts spiraled. Mike had never been this vocal about anything when I was home. I cautiously approached the stairs, trying not to make a sound. I knew he was supposed to be working downstairs in his office, as usual, and he hadn't mentioned any meetings for the day. So, what was he doing up there? I crept closer, a sense of unease crawling through my veins. The voice sounded like it was coming from our guest room. I pressed my ear to the door. The voice was unmistakable. It was definitely Mike's. But there was something different. I strained my ears to make out the words. It wasn't a regular phone call. It was too personal, too intimate. Yeah, I know it's risky, but I can't keep lying to her forever. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. The blood drained from my face, and my breath came shallow. A cold wave of realization swept over me, but I couldn't process it. My husband was talking to someone, and I couldn't even recognize the voice of the other person. I'm not saying it's over, but yeah, I don't know how much longer I can keep this going. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I had been married to Mike for 7 years. 7 years of trust, of laughter, of sharing everything. But the words I was hearing right now shattered that world in an instant. Mike had always been loyal, or so I thought. He'd always told me he'd be honest with me, that we'd never have secrets. But these words, this conversation, spoke of something else. I stepped back, my hands shaking. What was happening? Who was he talking to? Why hadn't I seen any signs before? The door to the guest room was slightly ajar. I couldn't help myself. I pushed it open just enough to get a glimpse of the scene inside. What I saw knocked the breath right out of me. Mike was standing in front of a mirror, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair slightly messy, as though he'd been preparing for something. But it was who he was talking to that made my heart stop. Standing in the room with him was another woman. She wasn't some stranger, she was someone I recognized. Someone I thought I knew well. But then the woman turned around and smiled at me, as if she were expecting me, and it hit me. This wasn't a secret affair. This wasn't betrayal. It was my sister. She wasn't just visiting for the weekend. She was staying with us for a while. Mike had called her to tell her something about the house, something about what he was planning for me. I had no idea, but my mind was too muddled by the shock to piece everything together. I don't understand, I stammered, stepping fully into the room, my heart still racing. What's going on here? Mike turned around, his face a mix of confusion and concern. Baby, we were going to surprise you. It's your birthday next week, and we've been planning something special. I looked at my sister, who was now laughing softly, a smile of reassurance on her face. Surprise? I repeated, still reeling from what I'd heard. But the weight of the moment starting to settle. Mike took a step toward me. We've been planning the ultimate surprise birthday gift for you. You've always wanted a family vacation, something really extravagant. So, we've been talking with your sister about organizing it. We were going to send you on a secret getaway. I couldn't believe it. The relief came in a rush, but it was also followed by embarrassment. Here I was, standing in the doorway, eavesdropping on something that wasn't what I thought at all. Then why were you talking like that? I asked, still trying to process the flood of emotions. Why were you? Why did you sound so guilty? Mike laughed, running a hand through his hair. I was talking to Sarah about the surprise plan. I didn't want to spoil anything, so I was being careful. I didn't want you to overhear it and ruin the surprise. It hit me. How wrong I had been. How quickly I had jumped to conclusions. And as my heart slowly returned to its normal rhythm, I couldn't help but feel a bit silly for letting my imagination take me down such a dark path. The next few days were filled with awkward laughter and apologies as I tried to make sense of my overreacting. I had feared the worst, but the truth was much more innocent and much more thoughtful than I could have imagined. When we boarded the plane to Paris, I smiled, holding my passport tightly in my hand. I realized I was headed to the City of Lights, but it wasn't just for the romantic streets and the art galleries. It was also for the simple lesson I had learned. Trust is everything, and sometimes our fears can blind us to the love and surprises right in front of us. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely at ease. Because the only thing I would be worrying about from then on was whether or not I'd get to try that croissant from the bakery Mike had promised to take me to.